Hey everybody, Frank Caligiuri. I'm here with On-Chain. I'm excited to see everybody. Myself, I moved actually out of the Northeast to be in the great state of Texas, so thank you for welcoming me. But for On-Chain, we're focused on self-custody. We're focused on Bitcoin only and giving people the ability to have financial services with the Bitcoin that they hold. So it is great to honor and welcome the first U.S. Senator that has been pro-Bitcoin and reading all the books and obviously doing the knowledge to take the homework and understand, what we need in this industry. So without further ado, please welcome Ted Cruz.
Senator Cruz, thanks so much for being here. My name is Steve Kennard with the Texas Blockchain Council, and I'm a supporter of yours and thankful for all of the efforts that you do to represent our community. I'd like to start, though, by giving you the opportunity to highlight that there's a broader struggle going on here around the role of the federal government, the overreach that we see from the federal government. I have to say, I've been reading one of your books, Justice Corrupted, and you lay out that this has actually been going on for decades. There's a whole process behind this, and you've been involved in pushing back against the federal government. Can you talk a little bit about your career, your background, and how Bitcoin and digital assets is a piece of this broader fight that you've been a champion in?
Well, Steve, I'm glad to. Let me say welcome to everyone who's here for the summit. Welcome to all the Texans who are here, and welcome to everyone not yet from Texas, but heading here soon, I hope. I got to say, when it comes to Bitcoin, when it comes to blockchain and crypto more broadly, I could not be more bullish. And I want the state of Texas to be an oasis. I want the state of Texas to be the single most favorable location on the face of the planet for the blockchain industry. And I think we have a lot of attributes that make us ideal for blockchain to grow and flourish. One of the attributes, you look at Texas, and Texas, there's a rugged frontier mentality in this state. This is a state that was founded by a bunch of wildcatters who were guys typically with third and fourth grade educations, who went out with not having $2 to rub together and began drilling holes in the ground, and one after the other became the richest men on earth. And in Texas, that entrepreneurial spirit is a huge part of who we are. You look at who the people of Texas revere, who we lionize. It is the entrepreneurs and the innovators and the risk takers. That's what Texas is. And so when it comes to business generally, we want to create in Texas, and I think we've done a very good job of creating in Texas an environment where innovators and entrepreneurs can invest capital with low and reasonable taxes, with reasonable and predictable regulation, and can go change the world. And as I look at blockchain, it is incredibly exciting what the men and women in this room are doing now. But I am much, much more excited by what y'all will be doing in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, where I expect this room to be much, much bigger. And I expect the impact in terms of jobs and economic development to be much, much bigger. But there is a fundamental divide. It's a divide in Washington. It's a divide across the globe with who has the power. And there are many voices that want government to have the power over every aspect of your life, over what you say, over what you do, and over your finances. There are others who want individuals to have the power, who want individual liberty, that it's your business what you say, it's your business what you believe, it's your business how you worship, it's your business what you do with your finances. And that divide, I think, is fundamental. Listen, we're in Washington at a time where the government is spending money it doesn't have. We've got regulations that are destroying jobs. And I am fighting here in Texas to keep Texas, to keep this. Why is it that 1,000 people a day move to the state of Texas? And that's happened for over a decade. There are a lot of reasons, but the one simplest reason, Texas is where the jobs are. You come to Texas and you have an environment where you can create a small business, you can grow it into a medium or large business, you can hire people, you can innovate, you can experiment, you can prosper, and you can live well. And what Texans want, my number one priority is jobs. And that's why I'm so bullish on blockchain, because I think blockchain represents freedom and it represents jobs. And both of those are at the heart of Texas. And I have to mention one other piece, which is to do Bitcoin mining, you need low-cost, abundant energy. And if there's one thing the state of Texas understands, it's low-cost, abundant energy. And so that combination, I think, make us the perfect storm. And I can tell you in the Senate, I'm committed to fighting to keep Texas that oasis for a lot of years to come.
Well said, Senator. And along those lines, there's a particular threat that you've really been a leader in pushing back against, and that's central bank digital currency. As you said, if Bitcoin is freedom money, and I think most people in this room agree that it's freedom money, on the other side of the coin, you have this threat of political money, of surveillance money, and this central bank digital currency. You, however, stand taller than most in that you've actually introduced legislation to prevent that, and unfortunately haven't gotten the support that it deserves. Can you talk a little bit about that process, that effort, and what the future might look like there?
Sure. I think a CBDC would be a disastrous development. And I think it is a very real threat from Washington. Look, let me make a broader point about the threats to the industry, and then let's go to CBDCs after that. I think the single most dangerous force that could do massive damage to the blockchain industry is the United States government. There is no force on the planet with greater capacity to devastate this industry than Washington. And if you look at what happened in China, where China banned Bitcoin, why did they do that? Well, China hates Bitcoin for the same reason that Elizabeth Warren hates Bitcoin. Because they can't control it. That's what they want. They want to control it. By the way, that's exactly the reason I love Bitcoin. I don't want government to be able to control your finances. I want you in charge of your finances. And when it comes to a CBDC, there's a reason China is so enthusiastic on a CBDC, because they view it as a monitoring and espionage tool to understand every financial transaction every person is making as part of their social credit effort. Look, they're engaged in the greatest espionage and control operation the world has ever seen, trying to control every individual decision of every Chinese citizen. When it comes to a CBDC, look, I have a great deal of trepidation that the Federal Reserve is going to try to do this unilaterally. I don't believe they have the legal authority to do so, but that doesn't mean they won't try. And I think Jay Powell is getting a lot of pressure from Janet Yellen and from Elizabeth Warren to go exactly down this road. And so you're right, I've introduced legislation to prohibit a CBDC. I don't think the federal government should be in that business at all. And if you want to understand the dynamic, go back and look at the first version of what the Biden White House called Build Back Better. I called Build Back Broke. But the first version of that legislation included within it a requirement on the banks that they report every single financial transaction every American made in excess of $400. Now, that means every mortgage payment you make. That means every rent payment you make. That means for pretty much any car you've got, every car payment you make. And it feels like we're not far away from that being every time you fill up your gas tank. That's what they want, the federal government having a record of every single economic transaction in America. When it comes to a CBDC, that's what they're hoping to get out of it. And it's a battle. It's a battle where if you believe in government control, a CBDC is a twofer of, number one, providing that control, but number two, I fear if they roll it out, they would combine it with a regulatory assault designed to try to put a whole lot of people in this room out of business. And I think that would be catastrophically foolish. But Washington is really good at catastrophically foolish. And so I think we need to be very, very aware of the threat of Washington going down that road.
I certainly agree, and I want to return to a comment you made, which is Texas stands above most others in our energy abundance, our energy entrepreneurship, our leadership in that industry. Broadly, I want to tell the brief story of a little more than a year ago when we had the pleasure to host you, take you out to see the largest Bitcoin mining operation in the world right here in Texas. And I want to really congratulate you first because we were there for, I think, over an hour. We had a very fruitful discussion, and you've rightly pointed out that most people pass judgment on an industry without having gone firsthand to learn and to interact with that. So thank you for doing that. What would be your message to some of your fellow colleagues in the U.S. Congress that maybe haven't seen this firsthand, haven't heard from the industry firsthand, and how did that impact you kind of learning about the investment in rural communities that Bitcoin mining is bringing?
Yeah, look, I'd say a couple of things on that. Number one, there are very few things more terrifying than seeing how legislation is made in Washington. Bismarck famously said there are two things you don't want to see being made, sausage and legislation. And there's real truth to that. You look at the United States Senate, I've joked, if you ever want to feel young, the best thing you can do is serve in the United States Senate. Because the median age in the body is about 107. And, you know, we have colleagues that reminisce about Eisenhower. And when it comes to tech savvy, I have a recent colleague of mine who referred to the internet as a system of tubes. These are not people any of you would hire to do anything technological. And it's dangerous because, look, you look at legislation that was passed in the last Congress where you had regulations on Bitcoin and writing legal definitions that effectively defines Bitcoin miners as broker-dealers of securities and gives the federal government the power to mandate the collection of information that you can't get. It was drafted, I introduced the amendment on the Senate floor to strip it out entirely. And the case I made, I said, listen, is there a time when we need to have some federal regulation of a blockchain generally? Almost surely. There is a role for regulation that has a light touch, that is uniform, and that allows the industry to flourish and that allows innovation. But before we have legislation or regulation, people ought to understand what the heck they're doing. And right now, Washington doesn't have that understanding. And so I don't know that there are 5 senators that could tell you what the hell a Bitcoin is. I mean, it is, and I have been trying for several years now. I've been engaged in a process of education, and I will readily admit that the men and women in this room, every one of you is more knowledgeable than I am on this topic. But in Washington, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And so, I've tried to spend a lot of time talking to a lot of the folks in the room and, more importantly, listening and understanding where things are and where innovation is going. And for example, one point, so there are lots of reasons why the extreme left hates blockchain. One of it is economic freedom and the barriers it puts to government regulating and monitoring financial transactions. But another area is this deep antipathy to the use of energy. And so you get voices on the left that say Bitcoin mining is immoral because of the energy that's consumed. I think that is a profound mistake. And so I try to spend a lot of time explaining the real benefits, number one, in the renewable space, that Bitcoin mining can provide essentially a battery that you can have. There are a lot of places in the world where the wind blows, or the sun shines, but there are not electrical power transmission lines. And with Bitcoin mining, you could erect a windmill or you could erect a solar array and begin reaping economic rewards almost immediately in terms of mining, which enables you then to have a rate of return that funds the expansion to eventually run electrical transmission lines. That functions as a tool for venture capital for new investment in renewable energy. There is also, when you look at things like flared natural gas, you go to West Texas, and you see all sorts of fires lighting the horizon as natural gas is being flared because there's not the transmission equipment to take it to market. And Bitcoin mining enables you to capture that flared natural gas and use it to generate value, generate Bitcoin. That helps the environment. It's not good for the environment to flare natural gas. If you're capturing it, you're helping the environment. And I'll tell you another piece that I think a lot of people don't understand that I try to explain is the enormous benefits to the grid, the electrical grid, that Bitcoin mining provides. Because, yes, it can consume a lot of power, particularly during peak times when there's a lot of energy being generated. But if you have a weather emergency, you either have an incredibly hot period where ACs are running overtime, or you have an incredibly cold period where there are challenges. The beauty of Bitcoin mining is it can be shut off in a fraction of a second. And so it functions, again, essentially as a battery, being able to instantaneously make that power available to heat or cool people's homes or schools or hospitals or businesses in times of emergency. And that value for grid resilience, I think, is enormously underappreciated and is something that as an industry, we need to do a much better job communicating.
I think that the nuance you just articulated there is something the Senate could do well to listen to more. I really appreciate you being willing to carry that banner in the Senate. And I'd like to pivot a little bit to Bitcoin and the recent news that you are accepting Bitcoin for political donations. And what I'd like to talk about is perhaps the most obvious way that people can get politically involved, and it's important, is to vote. Of course, to vote. We've got an election. We've got an election coming up. We need to re-elect Senator Ted Cruz to continue to represent this industry so well in the U.S. Senate. So get out and vote. That's important. Another way you can get politically involved is step up and get in the arena, run for office. You've served as a model for me. I'm running for the Texas House of Representatives to defend our freedoms and keep Texas, as you say, sir. I encourage more of you to consider getting the arena. We need more people in this room running for office. But another way that's often overlooked is political donations. I'll admit personally, most of my life I said, I'm not going to give any of my money to political causes. But as I've developed such an interest in the process and have a deep appreciation for the opportunity Bitcoin offers, I think it's important to note that financial resources matter in elections. And on top of that, there's a platform now that allows for compliant Bitcoin donations. And here's an important statistic. The overall cost to accept a Bitcoin donation fully compliant, because the network is so efficient, is 1%. When you're using a credit card, it's 4%. So for a lot of senators, maybe you don't need to understand what Bitcoin is, but 1% is better than 4%. I'd like you to just elaborate a little bit around the recent announcement that you're accepting Bitcoin, but this importance of getting people engaged and understanding that this is a part of the political process and we have to step up.
Yeah, well, look, I think it is very important. I wanted my campaign to be one of the very first campaigns to take Bitcoin. I thought that was important. It was important as a statement. I think we will see a time fairly soon where everyone is doing so, but it takes some time for people to adopt to new innovations. Listen, I will say when it comes to the world of politics, as I look at the crypto community, I think this community is very much where Silicon Valley was 15 years ago. So 15 years ago, I think Silicon Valley was at a fork in the road, where Silicon Valley could have gone down the road of being independent libertarians, leave me the hell alone, get government off my back, And I think that would have been a very positive road for them to go down. Or they could have gone down the road of the woke nanny state. We want to control you. We want to censor you. We're all for maximum government power. And in my view, Silicon Valley unfortunately chose the latter path. I think the crypto community is at a similar fork in the road. Many of the folks in this room have not typically been all that political. And there's a danger in that. Look, in the crypto world, I think some folks see Bitcoin as inevitable, that nothing can stop it. I hope the federal government doesn't prove that wrong. How many of y'all remember Napster? Remember Napster? It was viewed as a great technological innovation for file sharing and music, and then boom, it disappeared from the face of the planet. If the federal government goes down the same road that the Chinese communists have gone down, that would do massive damage to the businesses of everyone in this room. Now, some of y'all will say, well, Bitcoin will survive even if America tries to outlaw it, and that may be right. But how many of y'all have your El Salvadorian passports? America is unique. And so the stakes are significant. And you mentioned my campaign, so I'm in the middle of a re-election campaign. I will be on the ballot this coming November. And I'll tell you, we are expecting a very, very serious race. My single greatest challenge is complacency. That people say, look, it's Texas, you're a Republican, it's a re-elect, it's impossible for you to lose, this is a layup. And I'll tell you, I think objectively that is not the case. My last re-elect in 2018 was the single most expensive Senate race in U.S. history at the time. We were outraised and we were outspent 3-1 in the state of Texas. Now, what did that mean? It meant you saw tens of millions of dollars come in from all over the country. And as a consequence, the Democrats in the state of Texas more than doubled Democrat turnout in the state of Texas. They drove Democrat turnout from 1.8 million to 4 million. Now, that was unprecedented. That had never happened in this state. We saw what was happening. We leaned in aggressively on the other side. And we drove Republican turnout from 2.8 million all the way up to 4.2 million. But 0.2 was the whole margin. I won by 200,000 votes out of more than 8 million votes cast. 2.6% was the margin. And so Chuck Schumer has already made clear, I am the number one target for him in the country in terms of senators that he wants to defeat. I fully expect that they will spend over $100 million in the next year trying to defeat me. Now, look, we don't intend to lose. I believe we're going to win this race, but we're going to win this race because we're doing the hard work. And I will tell you, when it comes to resources, whether we win or lose depends on, do we have the resources to communicate in the face of an onslaught on the other side? And let me tell you, sometimes I hear people say, money doesn't matter in politics. And you're running now. You know, my reaction to that, I laugh and say, really? So clearly you've never run for office. Let me give you an example. What does it mean to be outspent 3-1 in a race? I'll give you one data point from the 2018 campaign. My campaign had a total of 19 paid campaign staffers across the state of Texas, 19. Beto O'Rourke's campaign had 807. That's what it means to have a heavily skewed battlefield. So I will say, look, if you want the senator from Texas fighting to defend financial freedom, fighting to defend financial privacy, fighting to defend Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain, fighting to keep the federal government off of your backs, fighting to keep the feds out of issuing a CBDC, then I need your help because we are going into a heck of a fight. And so I would encourage y'all, come support the campaign. I need your help, and I give you my word, I'm going to keep fighting with every force I have against the federal government coming after and trying to eliminate the future of Bitcoin. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. And I think an important final step here before we wrap up is I'm a personal supporter. I'm going to vote for you, but I don't want to just talk the talk. I want to walk the walk. I'd like us to put up a QR code, please, for your campaign. I'm going to donate $1,000 of Bitcoin to your campaign today. I believe it's important to fund this fight and to be a part of it. And for some of you in the audience that maybe haven't owned Bitcoin, don't think it works, you know, there's ways to donate with US dollars as well. But I think we have to walk the walk and show not only does this technology work, but again, you have a fully compliant platform that costs, let me see if I can get the QR code. There you go, it works. There's a fully compliant platform that costs 1% to use Bitcoin versus 4% with a credit card. It's just better. I think that's an important message, and we have to be a part of that. This platform is one I've used before, so I have my information populated, which makes it even easier. I click Bitcoin, it generates an address. You have the option for on-chain and Lightning. It's a Bitcoin-only donation platform. You can copy the address this easily, flip over to a wallet, which I have here easily on my phone. Open that up. Paste the address in. And there, I get a confirmation. It's that easy to use Bitcoin to be a part of the movement and show the technology works today. We can do this. We can be a part of supporting legislators that are taking this fight to the front line. And I think that's really a part that we're missing. It's a message we wanted to share today. Thank you, Senator. I'd like to give you just a last chance to give some closing words around why it's so important to keep having events like this, keep coming together, and keep telling people this technology isn't going away. And we are going to fight for this because it's American principles.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you for the contribution you just gave, and thank you to everyone who scanned the QR code and is supporting the campaign as well. I appreciate it. Look, just wrapping up, I want to do something to underscore what I think is so important about blockchain. Some of y'all may remember a couple of years ago when we had COVID lockdowns going on, and in Canada, there were a group of truckers that were doing a freedom convoy. They didn't want to have a forced COVID vaccine, and they were doing a convoy to express their free speech and speak out against that mandate. And the Canadian government was very upset and came down on them very hard. And initially, they were relying on GoFundMe, and then GoFundMe, Silicon Valley being the woke collectivist place it is, GoFundMe pulled down their funds and said, no, we won't support this because we don't like what you're doing. And so they then began relying on Bitcoin contributions to fund their efforts to speak out and in defense of freedom. And the Canadian government, the Ontario government, went to a Bitcoin custodian and wanted them to seize the assets to prevent the truckers from getting them. And there's a letter that a Canadian company wrote back that I just want to share with you. This is a letter I've actually read on the Senate floor. It goes as follows. Dear Ontario Superior Court of Justice, Nunchuck is a self-custodial, collaborative, multi-sig Bitcoin wallet. We are a software provider, not a custodial financial intermediary. Our software is free to use. It allows people to eliminate single points of failure and store Bitcoin in the safest way possible while preserving privacy. We do not collect any user identification information beyond email addresses. We also do not hold any keys. Therefore, we cannot freeze our users' assets. We cannot prevent them from being moved. And we do not have knowledge of, quote, the existence, nature, value, and location of our users' assets. This is by design. Please look up how self-custody and private keys work. When the Canadian dollar becomes worthless, we will be here to serve you too.
I couldn't think of a better ending than that, Senator.
That is spectacular, and that is why Bitcoin and blockchain generally matters. Thank you for what y'all are doing, and welcome to Texas. Everybody move to Texas.
Hey guys, thanks for coming out to the 2023 North American Blockchain Summit. It was the best summit yet. We look forward to hosting you again next year. If you enjoyed the summit or like what you saw in this video, be sure to subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about membership in the TBC, go to texasblockchaincouncil.org to learn more.